Begin by installing the zipper on the left side wearing. I already have the zipper teeth pressed open with the iron so that it's easier to see down that line, and I'm starting manually. I'm beginning with a back tack and stitching, keeping the zipper teeth close to my piping foot or invisible zipper foot, and going down to my pre-marked end point for my zipper. And now I'm closing my zipper manually, matching up the waistband and pinning my other side, right side wearing of the zipper in place. And now I'm re-unzipping the zipper so that I can better line up the zipper for the right side wearing attach. Next, I'll switch out the zipper foot for the other side and begin installing the right side wearing invisible zipper, starting with a back tack and then again stitching all the way down to my marker where I want my zipper to end. Next, I'll close my zipper and push everything in the seam allowances away from the stitch so that I can get as close to the bottom of the zipper end as I can and stitch down the center back to the top of my vent. Here you can see my zipper. I'm going to use a hot iron. The whole metal part is hot, so be careful not to burn your fabric. I'm going to move it back and forth over a few teeth until they start to soften up and melt together. And once they melt together, the zipper will no longer be able to open past that point. And here you can see that zipper in place. And now I can cut off the rest of the tail of my zipper, and using a lighter, I can melt that plastic and make sure it doesn't fray any further. Next, it's time to close the vents. We'll start the vents by opening up what will be the right side wearing, folding it over on itself, lining up the two angular points at the top, creating a roll on the hem. And for this one, I want to start right from the end of my back tack and go straight down to create the front of the vent. On the other side, I'll flip it over, matching up the angles on the top. And from the end point of my zipper, I'm going to go at an angle following the seam allowance to create the back side of my vent. Here I'll start really close to that point with the invisible zipper foot that allows me to get as close as I can to that already existing seam. And then for the other side, I'm going to start at the bottom of the garment and stitch up the angle of the vent itself, positioning my needle at my pivot point and then swinging my entire garment around so that I can approach the interior where the center back seams will all converge at the vent. Before we can turn out our vents, we need to snip the seam allowance through to our stitch line at the beginning of the vent. We need to snip the angles to relax the fit of the vent first, and also trim off the excess of the angle on the other side to reduce bulk when we turn that piece of the garment inside out. So I'm just going to clean off that corner so that there's less bulk when we turn it inside out. And here you can see I'm flipping out that part of the vent, the under part of the vent, so that it will tuck under the center back just like that, and we'll put a little tack across the bottom to hold the vent in place. But before we do that, we need to close our zipper lining, so we'll flip the garment faces together, pinching our zipper in between our lining, as you can see here. I'm going to insert it under the machine and start with a back tack, and I have my regular foot on, and with the regular foot I can actually line up the zipper teeth with the outside edge, and that gives me a nice clean line down the middle of the zipper tape for the lining. I don't need my lining to be as closely attached to the teeth as I do for myself. And then I'm going to stitch down as close as I can to the point and then back tack. And then here's where I did the exact same thing on the other side, but I forgot to hit record, so I don't have that footage, but I just did the exact same thing on the other side. And that brings us to here, where we can flip our entire garment out through the small opening between the center back zipper ending and the top of the vent. And as I'm pulling the garment all the way out and making sure my zipper corners and everything is nice and clean, and now I've got to pin this little piece closed. We do have to close this by hand using a slip stitch. There's no way to get this seam in the machine, so I'm just going to use 2 pins to close it, and then we're almost done. We'll start by tying a knot in our thread. I want to hide my knot up in the seam allowance where it's less visible, and then I'm going to bring my needle out towards the base of the zipper, but I want to reinforce this part, so I'm going to go at about 1/8 of an inch, I'm going to do a couple of stitches and bring the fabric together nice and tight there and start with a knot so that the opening and closing of the zipper doesn't wear on that seam. And then I'll start my slip stitch by going about 1/8 of an inch through the fabric, pulling the thread tight, and then going to the next piece of fabric, trying to minimize the visibility of my thread, and go over again about 1/8 of an inch to make these very small tight stitches all the way down this center back closure. And then I'll finish that whole thing off with a knot and hide the tail just inside the lining and snip it off. And now we just need to put our final bar tack on our vent along the top. So I'll do this from the inside of the garment so I can see the edge better. And I'll start and end this tack with a little back tack. And then once we trim our tails clean, you can see our beautiful finished skirt, our beautiful zipper and lining. Everything's closed, cutting off a few last trims. And here's our vent and our pockets. OMG, right? Totes adorbs.